This is an Irish independent podcast.
Well, for Ireland, with each passing week this November, performances have certainly improved. Results as well. Lost to New Zealand, game of two halves against Argentina, and then something a lot more comprehensive on Saturday, albeit against hugely disappointing Fiji. And so on we go to Joe Schmidt on Australia on Saturday, 3:10 kickoff. That is, by the way, the only November fixture this weekend. No other test matches on. There is URC on at the weekend. As ever, coverage of the autumn series here in Indo Sport is brought to you by Energia, who sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels. At Grassroots, there is, of course, the Energia AIL. They are the official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht and the Irish men's and women's teams. And you'll be aware, I'm sure, as well, of the Energia Rugby for All initiative, which very much supports inclusion and a welcome to everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. To learn more about their partnerships and indeed an exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. Here in studio, he was at the game on Saturday, Rory O'Connor. Hello.
Hey, Joe.
And watching from afar, I'm sure, Eddie O'Sullivan. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Joe.
Ireland 52, Fiji 17, 8 tries, Matt Hansen with 2, Doris, Van der Fleer, Casey, Bundyaki, Gus McCarthy, Ronan Kelleher. Bit more like it, Rory. What are we saying then about this Irish performance in the context of what Fiji offered?
Yeah, I think that context is important. Fiji, I expected more of them. They are a team who got to the World Cup quarter-final last year and beat Australia in that tournament. They beat Wales 2 weeks ago, and this was probably a dip from them, and to concede 17 penalties against a team like Ireland is absolute harry-carry. You're just a team that loves to attack off line out, and you're just giving them repeated chances. At times it was like an attacking exercise for Ireland, where they just kept getting the ball back in good positions, try and break this. And like Fiji wouldn't be known for being the most organised, structured defence either. So it's a perfect opportunity.
The cliche with Fiji, and it certainly happened in the World Cup against Wales very memorably, the cliche would go, and indeed Mick Byrne said as much about Prendergast, that he was saying if it was a white jersey, it would have been a red for Prendergast. Were they unlucky to concede 17 penalties, or
no? I think
rights?
You can discuss we can debate the yellow card, red card, and while I think ultimately the right decision was reached, on another day another ref could have sent Sam Prendergast off, and I do think often teams like Fiji do struggle. I thought their discipline was poor, and they did. I think we are seeing that the Southern Hemisphere teams are beginning to wane as the window goes on. That they came in match hardened. Fiji played in the Pacific Nations Cup, and the Rugby Championship teams played in the Rugby Championship, and they were in real fine fettle when they came in, and having only played, the season shifted back. It starts in October instead of September now in the Northern Hemisphere, and 6 games, none of them being in Europe, I think meant that Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, France, even Italy, ran New Zealand relatively close at the weekend, were a bit undercooked coming in, and that fed into those opening weekend performances. And the Northern Hemisphere teams are finishing much stronger than the Southern Hemisphere teams. Argentina lost heavily enough in Paris on Saturday night. Having said all of that, though, I thought Ireland were very good. I didn't mean for that to be a very negative answer. I thought a lot of it was the most complete and coherent performance we saw from them. Attacking-wise, they looked really well structured. They held their shape much longer in this game than they did in other games. Their breakdown work was good. They weren't tested massively defensively, and they were broken twice in the second half. But whenever Fiji did come at them with huge power, they were able to deal with what was thrown at them. They got. I was worried at the start of the campaign when he picked an older team and they performed so poorly that they were running out of road a little bit. Well, he has, over the course of the next 2 games, he has infused the team with youth, and having kind of alarmingly started talking about how we don't have thousands of players. Well, Gus McCarthy had only played once for Leinster before this season, and suddenly he's involved in 5 tries in an international rugby match at the age of 21. Maybe the kids are all right. Maybe that these players just need an opportunity to shine, and they'll prove themselves. So I think he comes away with it with a deeper squad, a more confident team, and proper headaches going into this week. And that's about as good a job well done as you could get out of a Fiji game in round 3 of an autumn series.
Yeah. And to be fair to him, he's thrown in Gus McCarthy. He's given 33 players game time this series. I make it 4 debutants: Gus McCarthy, Cormac Izuchukwu, Prendergast, Tom Clarkson.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Eddie, Saturday?
Yeah, I pretty much wouldn't disagree with anything there. Rory said, I think we did a really good job based on the opposition we faced. That's all you can ask. Their discipline was shocking, which made it life very easy for us. If you look at the 8 tries, 4 of them were actually set play tries. Doris's try straight off the training field. Brenda Flair's try straight off the training field. Hansen's try at the end of the first half, a cross kick, that's off the training field. And Kelleher's front peel at the end, off the training field. So 4 out of 8, that's pretty impressive in terms of execution. And the other thing I suppose is, I'd probably, if you're trying to find maybe something to say, like where could we maybe be better? And I thought we did see it, the shape was held better, the attack looked more fluid. But again, I would say that's in the context of the pressure that Fiji were bringing. I think the one thing is, if I was in Joe Schmidt's shoes, and I was saying, I want to have a crack at Ireland, what's the one thing I need to do against Ireland next weekend is don't give them access to your red zone, because they're going to punish you. And that's what Fiji did. They gave Ireland access to the red zone like time after time after time, and we punished them. I mean, I think 7 of the 8 tries came from 5 or 10 metres out, from either lineouts or tap penalties or scrum. And if I was Joe Schmidt, I'd be saying, keep Ireland out of our defensive third of the field as much as possible, hold our discipline, and we might be all right here, because Ireland have yet, we'd say, to break teams down from deep, like from the halfway line. And that's probably, if I was looking for something to focus on in terms of defending Ireland, or even for Andy Farrell in terms of where do we need to go next, is that capacity to keep our shape, but ultimately break teams down from 30, 40 metres out, and not depend on getting that easy access into the 22 and then, scoring from there. So you can't complain about performance, but I suppose if you're looking for something, maybe to the next step, that's for me is that shape, breaking teams down from deeper.
Can I throw in another negative? And by all means, as the coach here, maybe this is just part of life and you can't really make too big a thing out of it. But Ireland, 14 turnovers, 19 handling errors, moments like forward passes when tries are on. I still, Eddie, would kind of look at that and think, not quite humming either.
No, and I guess in a game that gets loose like that, and it's actually the one thing you don't want against a team like Fiji is a loose game. There was a fair bit of error, on those, but it's hard to be it's hard to be negative when you score 8 tries. But I suppose the takeaway for me, and I think Rory touched on it, is the ease at which we got those scores. It was so easy to score that you can get careless in games. But I think it wasn't the perfect performance in that sense. You're right, there was turnovers. We could add it. It would have been interesting to have that card being red on Prendergast, and it could have been red. How would it fare to get with 14? But again, I just thought we did what we had to do. We did it well when we got our chances. I still ask the question, outfield, we still looked that we're probably not polished enough to break better teams down from deep. And at some point, if teams defend very well against us, don't give us easy access to their 22, will we be able to conjure up enough scores from further outfield to break down a good team that are going to defend well? And now, having said that, and we talk about Australia maybe in a while, one thing that Australia at the moment, their defence is a catastrophe. To be honest with you, it's an absolute joke shop, in my opinion. But that's so. Unless Joe Schmidt's fixed the defence next week, we could have another good day out of the office.
Okay, Rud, do you want to come in? Final thought, and maybe that Irish attack lacking a touch polish.
Look, they're not as ruthless as they could be, and this
or that they have been.
Although even at the World Cup, they attacked in such volume. I mean, they attack in such volume that there's going to be ones they leave behind, and there were obvious ones. The forward passes, like the one where Matt Hansen passes to Cormac Izuchuku, doesn't have to be a skip pass. That can go through the hands and still be a try. But that, like, I think some of them are like Matt Hansen's still playing his way into form, and I think he was, as the game went on, you'd be more confident about him this week. But you got to remember that the team took a bit of a hit to their confidence against New Zealand when they made, I've forgotten the figure, was it 21 handling errors in the most important game of this window, the defining game of this window. So they're kind of trying to build back up, and there's going to be mistakes when you make 7 changes to your team and bring in players who looked really nervous during the anthems, like Izuchukwu, who did okay, but I think we'll see him do better for Ireland in the years to come. Prendergast running the show for the first time from the start, and all of these things. I mean, Gus McCarthy was most composed handler in the game in some ways, and that was great. But look, it's always going to be. I think when you get that many attacking opportunities, you're going to leave points behind. It's just next week, if Australia do up their game defensively and it's only 2 or 3 trips, well, you got to make those count. And that's one of the things New Zealand did to Ireland in the World Cup quarter final, is that Ireland were probably even through that tournament a bit profligate and got away with it. And the one time they didn't get away with it was probably that quarter final. Okay. And who was in charge?
When have you turned good cop to my bad cop, by the way? How's this happened? You're defending them now to my questions.
Not sure, to be honest. Full circle.
You had the line of the weekend, I thought. You said Sam Prendergast, he has main character energy, which he sort of does. There is a charisma to how he plays. He catches the eye. I watched it with the guys on the TV. They were far more mixed about his performance, actually, because I exited TV studio and over the next day or so read all the reports, and it was far more effusive. They weren't so sure. So set the ball rolling for us on Prendergast.
Well, like, the main character energy line is also to do with the fact that he nearly got himself, like from minute 3, he was the central figure in the drama. So he gets him, he's there for all of the attacking things that we're seeing, and he's questioned all week about his defence. And suddenly here he is shouldering a fella in the head, and you could argue he left it on him and trying to show a bit of meanness and nastiness and a bit of power.
I don't think those two things are unconnected. I suspect absolutely, yeah. A player of his age has listened to what's been said all week.
Well, he was up for media last Tuesday, and he was asked directly about being too slight, and I think he's heavier than Jack Crowley. He's 6'4", so his weight is distributed more evenly through him than other players, but he certainly he's not light, and
he's about 90
he
kgs.
Played GAA in Kildare growing up, and obviously played Leinster schools, and you don't get to the level he's at without having some toughness to him. But I do think it probably did infect him a little bit, and he didn't want to be bowled over by any of these Fijians, and like Craig Casey got thrown about in the first 10 minutes at times. I thought, I did watch the coverage, and I think people are looking for the downside when there's so much obvious upside to watch. I really enjoy watching him play. He's a captivating player to watch because he sees things that are not obvious to the eye. He sees passes that are not obvious to the eye. And I know Andrew Trimble said he sometimes forces those passes, and I respect his opinion, and I think it's fair criticism. But there's so much obvious potential and also ability, like right here, right now ability. He put people through gaps that other out halves don't see. He, apart from the couple of kicks that didn't go well, a lot of the other kicks were really, really excellent. His line kicking, the one he put dead, he was trying to get everything out of it, and Andy Farrell reckoned that probably was a harsh call that he got it in. It wasn't a Billy Burns. It was much closer than that. I thought his restarts were really excellent. Ireland won 3 or 4 back. Now again, probably an area where Fiji are not as good as other teams. I'm not saying 4 or 5 of us were asked to pick a team for this week in today's paper. I think everyone went for Crowley. I'm not ushering the end of Jack Crowley, but there is a serious contender and a player who really looks like he can go very, very high in my book, and is already right there. I don't think he's going to start him this week, but he might have it. There's a temptation. There must be a temptation. I think he'll start at least one of the European games for Leinster before Christmas. We may get a Crowley versus Prendergast head-to-head down in Limerick on the 27th or 28th of December. By the Six Nations, all bets are off, because he's coming like a train, and he's confident, and he's very, very good. If you focus on the positive, he is, in my book, he's a player of exceptional talent who is only 21. I mean, Johnny Sexton didn't make his international debut until he was 24.
No, I think he's half working at a bank at 21.
Yeah.
Coming like a train, Eddie.
I think, I agree with Rory. I think we have to put a bit of context around this. He's so inexperienced, this kid, at every level. I mean, he hasn't played really at the top end of the game, even at club level consistently. And he stepped into the test arena, and he's actually looked very polished. He's not perfect, but the notion that a 21-year-old will step into test rugby and play perfectly is asinine. He's bound to have moments where he makes mistakes or he makes bad judgments. But I think on a balance, there's no question that this guy is the real deal. I said it last week. There's a touch of class around him with the ball in hand. He just has that extra bit of vision. He squares the line up, as I said. He's a phenomenal player. He's lovely to watch. I agree with Rory. It's beautiful to watch him in action. Like, he has so much time on the ball. He holds it for so long before he pulls the trigger, and he terrorizes defenses like that. But the fact that we're nitpicking, a 21-year-old kid who's played his second test is very harsh. I think he's right up there. It's going to take time. He's going to have more games where he's going to maybe lose the plot of it or make mistakes. But that's all part of the development for him, And again, if he gets under the hood with Leinster, more, in terms of more big games, he's going to get better. So when he steps into the test arena again, he's even going to be better prepared. So I'm very optimistic. I think we are probably being very ambitious for him to think he's going to step in and he's going to be flawless. So I agree with Rory. We need to cool our jets a bit on what we're expecting off the young lad. Yeah. I thought he was exceptional. He got an armchair ride, but fair enough. That's not his fault. He just did what he had to do. And even then, he wasn't perfect. But look, there's no guarantee that even Jack Crowley would have been any better on the weekend. So he's definitely putting up to Jack Crowley. I doubt if Andy Farrell will roll the dice against Australia with him. It would be a massive call. But at the same time, maybe he got a feeling that maybe he's up for it. He might just do it. But it would be a bit of a shock. I'd agree with Rory there. I don't think he's probably going to do it. But who knows? As I always say, Andy Farrell has more information than all of us put together,
I feel like, Rory, Jack Crowley fans will feel you hone in on the possibility of Prendergast and overlook the mistakes, whereas with our boy Jack, there's a lot of honing in on the mistakes and less talk of the possibility.
Yeah, and there's a vocal contingent of those Jack Crowley fans out there.
They're going to find you on Blue Sky sooner rather than later as well. Don't think it's all sunshine over there.
I think Donnacha O'Callaghan was calling us the blue media. I don't think Eddie could be accused of being part of the blue media, in fairness to him. But I think Crowley got an awful lot of credit when he first came into the scene, and there is this thing where it's a bit like Ronaldo and Messi, where it's almost like to be praising one means that you're diminishing the other. Like, you're talking about a 21-year-old and a 24-year-old who are going to be vying for this jersey for the next 10 years.
In this context, you are, because they're going for the same jersey, whereas Ronaldo and Messi were going for
very
different
true, jerseys. Yeah, absolutely. But it goes back to O'Gara Sexton. It's which obviously, look, that was a player coming towards the end and a player at the start who was coming to get him. Like, these two players are going to be in each other's vicinity for the next 7, 8, 9 years, and I think Kieran Frawley still has something to say based on what we saw, maybe more as a foil for either one of them. I thought he was really that was lovely in the way they worked together. But yes, there is a massive focus on this rivalry that every time you say something nice about one of them, the other side comes out against you, which is fine. But that, I wonder how that's going to feed into the two of them and how they handle this, because it is. We're getting to Ward Campbell levels of scrutiny already, and they're both very young in their careers, So there is, I think, it is an element of their career that needs to be maybe managed a little bit by Leinster, Ireland, Munster. What are Munster getting back when they get Crowley at the end of this month? Are they getting an inspired Crowley who's going, I want to see this guy off? Because 2 years ago, when Jack Crowley dropped that goal against Leinster in the Aviva Stadium, Harry Byrne was starting opposite him that day, and at one stage Harry Byrne caught a high ball and Jack Crowley put him into the top of the east stand basically with a tackle. Like, you could see the intent to lay down a marker and say, this guy's been in the Ireland camp, but I'm going to knock him out of it. And I think if Crowley responds to Sam Prendergast's arrival and kind of channels all of the nice things that are being said about Sam Prendergast, and that goes into Munster's performances between now and the Six Nations, well, everyone's a winner. And I think everyone will recognise that Jack Crowley's playing well, because no one is writing Jack Crowley off at the age of 24. He has a huge role to play. Even if Prendergast is starting, Crowley is going to be his backup, and generally players come on for 20, 25 minutes. There will be moments where Prendergast is injured, where he loses form, and vice versa, where Ireland will need both of them to perform. And it's I don't think it's a healthy situation just yet, because neither of them are fully formed, and I think Farrell would feel like they both have work to do before, Crowley's already won a Six Nations, so maybe I'm being unfair on him. But like, when you get to the World Cup in 3 years' time, you're going to have a 23-year-old and a 27-year-old who have the bulk of 70 or 80 caps between them, probably, if they both stay injury-free, touch wood, plus Frawley in the mix as well. It's a pretty healthy position for a team to be in when we've been essentially relying on one player, getting deeper and deeper into his 30s, and with a fairly, although he pitched up very, very well, a propensity for getting injured at times. And also that guy is mentoring these 3 players as they go. It's the upside for Ireland is great, but yeah, at some stage you're going to have to choose your player and who you back through.
Yeah.
But we're not at that point yet.
Healthy ones, they're not sitting in the car ignoring each other on the way to kicking practice, as has been known to happen. So there is that aspect to it. I was just jotting down who played well, Eddie. And obviously, if any of these are wrong, correct me. But Casey looked to have a good game. Aki with his 17 carries, 7 tackles, 1 try, player of the match, played well. Robbie Henshaw is kind of immaculate in everything he does. Like, he's just such a good all-round player. Caelan Doris, 16 carries, 15 tackles, little cameo at centre. Gus McCarthy, obviously, who we should talk about. Jamie Osborne for 27 minutes looked super assured. Stockdale was going well. A bit of pressure on him to kind of remind everybody what he could do. Farrell said he thought he was going well before the injury. Prendergast, we've touched on, quite possibly leaving a few out. But a lot of guys suddenly went very well there on Saturday.
Well, yeah, they did. And all the guys you name checked there, they were right all up there. I suppose there's two sides to that kind of discussion. One is they're playing Fiji, so if you have a bad day against Fiji, you're not doing your prospects any good. It was a game where you needed to show up and you needed to play well and the opportunity was there to do that. And I think that it's also a reflection on the quality of the squad now, and guys are feeling that, when you get opportunities, you better take them, because Andy Farrell has, across a lot of positions, there's lots of options. Like the whole centre thing now is, you have obviously Aki had a big game. Robbie Henshaw is incredibly, like, when you say he's solid, it's an understatement. He plays really well every time he plays in all facets of the game. He rarely makes mistakes. Yeah. So he plays a top end player. You have Gary Ringrose there as well. So the midfield thing is who's going to win out that battle come the Six Nations, because the Six Nations are going to put your best team in the field if everyone's fit and healthy. I think Stockdale, again, if Stockdale had fallen under the bar on the weekend, that might be goodbye for him. So he knew he had to put it up there. Hansen, knows he's under pressure. He's coming back from injury. He's got to do it. So they're all in their own little bubbles where they have to get their own performance. I think Casey, again, knew he had to make a big impact. So all the guys that came through they were in a spot where if you don't show up today, you're going to put yourself behind the 8 ball coming into the Six Nations. So that's a great thing. That's competition right there and then. So fellas know you've got to deliver. No, there's no excuses. And they did really know. Again, you have to say context against the Fiji team that gave them the opportunity to do it. But you can see guys are holding in their opportunities and making sure that they're not leaving that behind.
Yeah, for sure. Henshaw's that solid in a kind of Dennis Irwin 8 out of 10, extraordinarily good kind of a way, On Osborne, it was only 27 minutes, which is a pity. Yeah. But if I was Hugo Keenan watching, I would think, heck, this guy's here. He's going to keep pushing me. I
think centre is the big conversation, one of the big conversations this week. But had Osborne not got injured, fullback would have been wide open.
You think?
I think Ian Madigan's suggestion from in here a couple of weeks ago that you could stick Keenan on the wing.
Yeah,
that's a runner.
His logic is as well. Obviously, Keenan's not slow, but he's excellent in the air.
And the game has shifted. Yeah. And against an Australia team that almost looks like it's playing a hybrid of AFL, NRL, and rugby union. Now Suili might be injured this weekend. He did his wrist, so that probably takes away some of the aerial threat. But that's one of the reasons I would go with Henshaw this weekend, because he's a brilliant aerial player in his own right and offers you something there. But Osborne really is growing and looking like a player who's going to start for Ireland over the course of this World Cup cycle, and it's only a matter of whether he plays 12 or 15.
Farrell was asked what's his best position and kicked a touch on that one.
Yeah, but he kind of did it in a more of a, like, let's wait and see, because we can play him anywhere. He didn't hedge it. He was just going like, well, why would I pigeonhole this guy? I think they see him as a fullback right now, and they obviously have a very good fullback. But no harm for Keenan to have a fire lit under him at 5 or 6 years into his international career. See how he responds, and he'll probably get a couple of European games with Leinster after this weekend. And look, he's just coming back as well. He had a bit of an injury ravaged season last year, had the sevens, missed a lot of rugby, so he's probably getting to grips with things as well. He's been decent this window without being spectacular, but I do think Osborne's coming, and it's going to be very hard to keep him out of this team as it goes on, because he looks like such like a top end. He gives you a bit more X factor, I think, than Keenan does in terms of his attacking ability. He gets his hands free. The versatility is great for getting you on a bench, but it also, even if he's starting, you can move, you can play with your bench a little bit as well, because he can basically play anywhere. I think he went into 10 while Prendergast was in the bin, and looked. Well, it didn't look that comfortable, but it's still the fact that they trusted him to do it when they had more experienced players on the pitch, like even Hansen has played 10 was telling. So I think he's coming.
Yeah. So Eddie, on Osborne, the caveat of it's Fiji, didn't play well against Ireland, and also just 27 minutes. But Osborne here?
Yeah, I'd love to see more of him, because I think he could have made a big statement. I do like him as a player. I think he's a tremendous athlete. He looks like he's got all the skills, attack, defence. He's good under the high ball. So I think it would have been great to see more of him, but I would agree. I think he's probably the next man up behind Hugo Keenan for full back. The tricky part is, where does he fit into this Irish team? Because I think he is in the mix to get on the field. He is that good. So where does he go? Does Andy Farrell pigeonhole to full back now and use him with Keenan at full back, or does he put him in the mix in the midfield? Given the midfield we have now, would he have limited opportunities there? Is he better off kind of going after full back now? Now the problem there is, of course, it goes back to Leinster. There's 2 Leinster players now vying for the Irish 15 shirt, which isn't ideal. So in terms of opportunities, but I do think he's a baller for sure, and he is going to have a say at some point. But the hard part is going to be, where does he fit? What part of the jigsaw does he fit into? Because there is serious talent in the back line. Does he go to the wing? I mean, again, he can play across the line. A bit like Frawley. That's the other thing for Frawley. Where does Frawley fit in, in this team? He can play in so many places, but I think Osborne is definitely the real deal. Yeah, I would agree with that. But I'd love to have seen more of him full back on the weekend, where he might have had, to give him the type of game was, he would have got ball in hand a bit more on the outside channels, because we were throwing around. He might have had a big say at the end of the day. He might have picked up a few tries. He might have created a bigger conversation around Hugo Keenan going forward. That's a pity that opportunity was lost,
Never mind that the Irish players he has competition with at Leinster. He now has Jordy Barrett to deal with as well, who Leinster didn't mention him on their injury update, but I believe he's in this week. He's signed from this week. New Zealand's window is over, so they're picking their backline. They've got the 2 Ireland, Henshaw and Ringrose could conceivably start this weekend. They've got Frawley as an option at 12 as well, and then Keenan and Osborne, if it will be there, and Jordy Barrett to fit in as well. So I think you can have a whole podcast on how do you pick the Leinster backline when everyone's fit. And like we talk about how aligned the Irish system is, I'm not sure. Sure, they'll get a lot out of training with Barrett for the next 9 months, and he might get Leinster over the line when it comes to a European Cup. But if he negatively impacts Jamie Osborne's development as an Ireland international, that would be a bit of a shame, because he, I guess Osborne has to be better than him to get into the team, and that's a challenge for him. But
it is.
It is a bit of a joke.
It's a joke. Gus McCarthy will have a challenge getting into Leinster team once everybody's fit and well again. Again, the guys on Virgin sort of irritated Munster fans by saying, well,
get the bus.
There's only one thing to do, and that's to go down and become Munster's best hooker since Jerry Flannery, and that just makes most sense for Ireland. It makes most sense for Gus McCarthy. And Eddie, you can say yay or nay to that.
Well, it's a genuine problem, and I think what you have to do is take the colour of the jerseys out of it, or where they go. The bottom line is that Leinster are top heavy with players, and in multiple positions. Even the discussion just had there about Jamie Osborne, where does Osborne Barrett affect his pathway? But in terms of Ireland, they need the best players playing regularly, and at the end of the day, Leinster have a surfeit of quality players and positions. So I would say forget about the colour of the jerseys, and I know people don't want to hear that, but what's best for Ireland is these guys to play in, week out. And I don't know how Leinster are going to manage all this talent, in a constructive way, where these guys' careers are not held back by the fact that they lack opportunity. And that goes across a lot of positions. And just the way it is, Leinster have the upper hand in terms of player development. They're bringing through a lot of quality players, and it's about opportunity. And yeah, if that's at the end of the day, if that's the best way forward for Gus McCarthy to leave Leinster, and then you can start to debate where does he go. But if it's best for Gus McCarthy to leave Leinster at the end of the day, then he should probably do that. And I'm sure David Humphreys will have a say in that. because his job is to make sure Ireland are at the top of the tree every time they get a chance.
And
it's a difficult one, you know, but we've got to get past this, you know. We've got to get past that he's Leinster going to Munster or Munster going to Ulster or whatever, you know, Munster going to Connacht. Like, this is how the system in Ireland works. And it's been working pretty well. So, you know, you can go down a rabbit hole on where somebody's from and where they shouldn't go or where they should go. But I think for the better of the game, you've got to make these tough decisions.
When we did put that clip up, by the way, a huge, overwhelming response was, "Oh yeah, because Joe Carbery really enjoyed his time down there. Why would they send him down to Munster, where it's a complete mess at the moment?"
Yeah, I don't think that's helpful. But I think what actually isn't helpful, the real factor is that Gus McCarthy looks at what's at Munster and he sees a club that just parted company with their forwards coach and their head coach, that is inconsistent, that just doesn't look that strong and doesn't look like a very attractive option. And he is from Blackrock. He has come up through the Leinster system. He grew up watching Leinster. He knows that the level of, like, he's being coached by a former, two-time World Cup winner, former Wales forward coach. He's now been shown that he's played 6 times for Leinster and he's in the Ireland team. Yeah. And he's comfortable. The environment's good. Everything's good. We're training with world-class players. So I'd say he's looking at it going, I'm better than Ronan Kelleher. I don't know if he thinks he's better than Dan Sheehan just yet, but I'd say he's thinking, okay, well, I've gone from 5th choice to the Ireland jersey in 6 games. What can I do in the next 6, 18, 20, 20 odd games? Now, that's the way players think. I think what has to happen, there's a rumour going around that Stuart Lancaster is going to be the next Munster coach. I believe it's not true. I'm led to understand that it's not true. But if they were to go with the help of the RFU and attract a coach of the calibre of, a Stuart Lancaster, someone who's with a proven kind of track record of developing players' careers. Not that the guys who are in Munster at the moment are not that, but they're not as experienced or as big a name. I think if players like Gus McCarthy knew that Munster was a place where they could go and improve and compete and be part of something, then they would be more, like, whatever about their ties to Leinster, they all want to play for Ireland. Yeah. And the message from Humphreys has been, it will be noted that if you show a lack of ambition by staying as 3rd, 4th, 5th choice at Leinster. But the message from Farrell has been, you can play 6 times for Leinster, start for us, play well, or you can turn down Connacht, as Sam Prendergast did at the end of last season after discussions with Leinster and probably with Andy Farrell as well, and you can start and come off the bench in big games. So it's up to the RFU. If the RFU want players to move, I think they have to present the other 3 provinces as more than also Rans. And at the moment, we are one super province capable of winning European Cups and URCs, even though they haven't actually done it for a while, and 3 relative, certainly weaker provinces. I'm aware that Munster have won a trophy more recently than Leinster, and I'm sure people will point that out to me in an instant, but that seems like more of a one-off than a consistent competitive. And that's what players are looking at. Yeah. They're loyal, but if they thought they could go to Munster and win and play for Ireland, and like the money thing, maybe the RFU need to step in and start offering lads a little bit of a bump. If you want to go down there, you'll help your Ireland chances, but here's an extra 50k or something like that to try and get people to move. Because at the moment, Eddie's point stands, there is a backlog in certain positions and there is a concentration of top talent. And if you look at the Provincial A competition that's going on at the moment, Leinster won comfortably against Munster at the weekend. Munster's tight 5, I think their front row were mostly ex-Leinster players anyway. So they're getting the kind of lads who aren't making it at Leinster and they're trying to make players out of them. But what they need to get is that next tier. They'll tell you they want to develop themselves, but like Leinster A went down to Connacht the week before and beat them as well. So it's across the board. Leinster are just way stronger. And you look at the 20s teams every year, the majority of players in those 20 teams are Leinster. And part of it is demographics, a lot of it is money, but it is just the reality of Irish rugby right now. And we need to see a strategy to help it, because the system is working to a point, but you think about all the players who are getting caught in that system, and McCarthy's an example. If you give a guy a chance, look at what he can do. If it hadn't been for injuries, he would have been playing for Leinster A on Friday. Yeah. Just one last one on the performance Saturday. Tom O'Toole came off the bench, Eddie, as this kind of loose head switching over from tight head project. The scrum was pinged twice with him on the field. I don't have the skill set to know to what extent he was at fault for that. So what do we chalk up O'Toole's cameo as?
It's hard to say, because it's the end of it. Towards the end of the game, things are kind of messy. Scrum calls are notoriously unreliable as to whether he did anything wrong. or whether he got away with stuff, So I think we didn't learn anything on that one. Well, I suppose what we learned is that we're not sure.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't come away and say that was a home run there. Yeah, definitely great. Like, the thing is, we don't have. We probably less information rather more on that cameo. So
yeah.
But then again, that's not his fault. He just went in and did what he did do. But having said that, yeah, it's hard to say, and I'm not dodging it. I'm be honest, I don't know.
Eddie,
the
most refreshing answer in the world of media at the moment is I don't know. I have to say,
I don't know.
Yeah.
What I saw, I couldn't tell you.
I would say again with regard to alignment. I mean, it's very unfair on Tom O'Toole that he's going in and playing there effectively for the first time for Ireland in an international game, and that he's not given the chance to play there for Ulster because he's too important to them as a tight head. So like, if we have this aligned system, then surely the Irish management can have an influence and say, look, this guy's a loose head, figure it out. But
so should he go to Munster as well? Like, why?
Well, Leinster tried to sign him as a tight head last year, but that was blocked. Yeah, right. Him and Beelum, they tried to get both of them when when Alatoa left.
So he has to go back and week in, week out, play tight head again, and then pitch up in the Six Nations and back to loose head. And somewhere in between.
This is why Cian Healy is ahead of him in the pecking order, because he's not. They can't trust him until Cian Healy retires and their hand is forced. They're in that bind. I was impressed. He went and talked to Holly Davidson. He gave away those 2 penalties and he went to look, what do I do here?
Right.
And she gave him the feedback. And the next scrum he locked it out. So there's an athlete there. There's a player there. They clearly like him. I saw Paddy McCarthy, Joe's little brother, in a kind of a selfie with Gus. They were in the same year in school. Right. If he can get fit, I think he'll come through and solve a lot of the problems there.
Really?
He's he's part of that generation with Prendergast and Gus McCarthy.
Okay.
And he just needs an opportunity.
Okay, interesting. So Australia then, to wrap up on Saturday, it's 3:10 kickoff. Australia beaten by Scotland 27-13. It's the 150th anniversary of the IRFU. There's a very nice special jersey for the occasion, which Andy Farrell was singing the praises of. Joe Schmidt's been talking about the occasion and his love for Ireland, and we still have a home over there and a daughter. I'm looking forward to catching up with her, actually, he said. Joseph Akuso-Suali injured his wrist. I think, even, Irish fans, but I think we'd all like to see him play, so hopefully he can make it. Eddie, you mentioned the defence. I was talking to Matt Williams as well. He was just off air. He was sort of saying 9 and 10 for Australia is still very, very workmanlike. They're grand, but everything else around them has improved massively. Now, he didn't mention that defence being catastrophe, as he said. So, shocking?
I think it's terrible, actually. I think it's one of the biggest Achilles heels at the moment. They've been doing this for a while. It's the softest drift defence I've seen in 20 years, where they don't even take the gain line. They just push sideways and they turn their bodies and chase the ball across the field. And they make tackles out wide, and they did turn Scotland over a couple of times where they held them up because Scotland latched on and drove them all on the wings. But by and large, you're giving up 10, 15 metres every time you carry. So the way to beat that defence is, and we used to do it to England in the 90s, is you go to the edges all the time, you run hard, you burn up 10 or 15 metres, you put the ball back, you go to the other wing, you burn up another 10 or 15 metres. And after 5 or 6 phases, they've given up like 50 or 60 metres and they haven't missed a tackle. But suddenly they're under 22. And that's, to me, it's a very dated defence. I mean, nobody that drift defends that soft as us. And they've been doing it all summer. And they've been porous on it. And then I think the worst thing on the weekend was against Scotland. The tackling was abysmal. I mean, the Tuipulotu try after the line-out was just embarrassing. Like, there was like saloon door tackles, Tuck your arm and the guy swings through it. And even for Josh Bayless's try and Finn Russell's try, the tackling was abysmal as well. They just missed front-up tackles. And I just think they're very vulnerable while that defence is in situ, and I'm just surprised they haven't addressed it at all. It's a problem for them. They're averaging this autumn. They're coughing off 28 points a game, and that to me is, and that's even having only scored, or they've given up 37 against England. They only give 20. They've 20 against Wales, which would make sense because Wales are not that good. But 27 against Scotland. That's 84 points in 3 games. That's 28 points a game, which is not sustainable at test level.
No.
Particularly when you're missing those tackles. Now, on the other side of the equation, their attack is actually very good. It's a really smart attack. They've got some big ball carriers in Vellatini, Skelton, Harry Wilson is a great workhorse, and Angus Bell is a beast. He's 127 kilos. And they do damage around the field in their carries, and then they're very snappy in their reloads. They've options front door, back door, and they can put really nice attacking sets together, and they will pick you apart. You know, they scored 42 against England, 52 against Wales, and Scotland was a damn squib. They only got 14 points, but they are capable of it. And I just think they're that sort of team at the moment. Now I do think that loss in Scotland has burst their bubble a bit. I think they were on a roll. Had they won in Scotland, they would have come to Dublin, cock a hoop. But I think that Scotland game has really knocked a lot of wind out of their sails. But it'll be interesting to see if it address their defensive flaws, and they are big flaws between the tackling and the soft drift defence. Ireland could kill them on the edges with that. And if their attack fires, Suali, I think it looks like he broke his wrist watching that tackle. And I'm no expert, but I'm watching rugby long enough, so he went down straight away and grabbed his wrist, and that's not a good sign. And he was straight off. So he's an awful loss to them as well. He's another guy that was a game changer for them.
The way you describe that soft drift defence is very damning, really. I guess one of the proponents of it would talk about how well we've great line integrity and therefore we don't miss tackles. But the way you describe it doesn't sound amazing. I mean, the phrase Joe Schmidt undated wouldn't be used all that often. There must be some logic there on his part. What would you think that might be?
I don't know, because to be honest with you, it's so dated. They're playing so soft on the edges. If you look at them defending, and what you normally do with a drift defence is if they have 5 and you have 3, when the first pass you shift 1, now it's a 4-on-3, and the second pass you shift again, it's a 3-on-3. That's how drift defence is supposed to work. And you give up ground getting from the 5-on-3 to the 3-on-3. But once you lock on to the 3-on-3, you stiffen up the line, you come upfield, you knock someone's backside.
Okay.
But Scotland, against Scotland, they were just ushering Scotland up the outside channels. They were actually running sideways and backwards to chase the ball and giving up, loads of meters, like every carry.
Right.
And they got a couple of turnovers, but it's unsustainable at that level that you can give up, 40, 50 meters in the outside channels and keep yourself in the game. I just can't believe they're doing it. Just watch the video. It's just shocking to watch.
And even back in the day, once you got into that 3v3 position, even if you've been drifting to get there, once you got into that position, you'd come up a bit harder.
Oh, you come up like with your hair on fire and knock them on his backside, because there's no overlap now. The line stiffens up and you come up and you knock people on their backside or drive them into touch where guys think they have a corner, and you use the touch line as your fourth defender, and you put him out of bounds and it's a turnover. But they're just defending so soft, it's unbelievable. And I don't know now that they doubled down them with just really bad tackle. I think they must have missed over 30 tackles up in Murrayfield.
Okay.
It was just shocking. Because the two Piloto try was embarrassing. You just look at it again. He ran between 2 defenders and they both put out their arms and ushered them in. But the Josh Bayless try and the Finn Russell tries again, very, very, very poor defence. Just not up to international standard. So the frustrating thing for them is that their attack is actually in very good nick, even though they didn't fire that well in Murrayfield. I just thought they had turned the corner attack-wise and they've got a nice balance, and it suits Australian rugby. A mate of mine, he played scrum half for the US, Timmy Usa, said that the feeling in Australia is, if people watch it, they don't mind if Australia loses as long as they give it a crack, that's the term to say. And if they go out and play and they run at teams and they try and take turns through phases and they try and pick apart defences, that's what makes Australians happy, because they're having a crack. And they're doing that with the ball. That's my point, is they turn the corner attack-wise, but you can't balance the books without defending.
That doesn't sound great.
No, although they did play quite soft. Sorry, New Zealand played very soft against Ireland in the World Cup quarter-final, and were quite content to let Sexton pass it wide and they'd catch them in the edges, and it worked quite well for them. And you've got to remember that Joe Schmidt's sole really remit here is to have a team capable of beating an Andy Farrell team at the Lions next summer. And I would suspect he did this a few times with Ireland. Say his first window, he put everything into beating New Zealand in the final game, and he kind of sacked off a game against Australia the week before. And he would often, if they were playing an Italy or some other opponents, he would focus on the England game the week after. And you wouldn't hear about it until afterwards, but they'd actually do a big week of work on the game in 14 days' time. You know, publicly it was one game at a time, and we're only focused on what's happening the weekend. But actually, behind the scenes, he will be investing heavily in the following week. And while a Grand Slam tour would have been lovely, I think Schmidt, it was never the primary goal of this tour. I think the main thing he wants to get out of this tour is obviously, you know, develop the team and get better, but also this Saturday is the one, because it is the dress rehearsal essentially. It's an Andy Farrell versus Joe Schmidt. Obviously, personally, it's a big one for him because he lived here and he retains great ties to the country. And I would say a lot of the work they've done over the last 2 weeks in particular, but even over the last window, has been building towards some sort of finale here in Dublin where they lay down a marker for the Lions series next year. And they would have probably kept some stuff back. I'm not saying the missed tackles are part of that, but if the players kind of got the sense that, you know, this wasn't as important with a 6-day turnaround, maybe there's just an element of minding yourself. And I would suspect there's a plan coming this week. No one puts together a tailored game plan for an opposition better than Joe. No one knows Irish rugby outside of Ireland better than Joe. I'd say he has seen. I'm sure he saw Sam Prendergast play for Newbridge. I'm sure he was aware of him when he was 14 and 15. You know, he is you know, his fingerprints were all over that World Cup quarter final defeat. He will be coming with some sort of a plan. So while I don't dispute what Eddie said at all, I would imagine, just knowing Joe and having followed him for so long, that there is some method to what looks like madness, and that will, whether they'll be the complete package this week, their whole aim is to be the big complete package next July, and they're getting closer to that. And he just didn't look in any way. I watched his press conference. He looked pretty chilled for a guy who just lost heavily in a game where they had history on the line. They lost the Grand Slam, but I don't think the Grand Slam was the aim. I think winning this Saturday was the aim.
Okay, interesting.
I wouldn't disagree with what you're saying about the Joe coming with a plan. There's no question about.
Yeah,
there's been born in the midnight oil. He'd be going through Ireland's recent games frame by frame and looking for the slightest weakness. That's his MO as a coach. He's excellent at that.
Yeah,
and we've seen that when he was at Ireland. You know. But I'm just looking at their overall defensive system, which hasn't shifted in recent games. I mean, they still coughed up 37 points against England. You know, they got slaughtered by 60 points by Argentina, I think, so they have a penchant for defending very badly, and I think it does come out of their defensive system. To me, is an extraordinarily soft drift defense that nobody uses anymore because it's so dated. Now, you know, it's not a zero-sum game. You can still work on your attack and smarten up your attack and put your power plays in that Joe's famous for. And you know, if he finds a weakness in Ireland, he's going to have a crack on Saturday, and that could be the difference in a tight game. But if I put you know, if they keep defending like they're defending, it won't be a tight game. I think Ireland will hurt them, and that's if Ireland did their homework. That's where I would be going next week, is into those outside channels, running those outside channels really aggressively. And I'm just surprised. You know, it's a part, and we all know he's a world-class coach. There's no doubt about that. It's just such a big aspect of your game, your defence, is that it's, to me, looks very dated and soft, and it does invite the opposition to run at you. And I mean, they got cut to ribbons in Murrayfield. And Scotland, this Scottish team, to be fair, and I've got a lot of stick because I've criticised Scotland on and off, but I think this is one of the best Scottish teams for a long, long time.
Eddie,
and you know,
is there any chance Schmidt playing chess, everybody else's checkers, is he holding a little bit back for July? Why would I give Andy Farrell the tape?
No, I don't think so. I mean, July is a different bag of spanners altogether. You know, you get back home, you circle the wagons, you look at what's coming down the pike, and you say, right, how do we get over this one? I don't think anyone in Test Rugby is putting stuff in the locker for another day. 8 months' time. You know, maybe it's and I've no doubt we're already saying is that Joe, as a time, has looked like beyond the next game to the game after, because he thought that was done. But I don't see him at the moment holding stuff back because the lines are coming. I think that's way too far down the track for him. Okay, interesting. We're pretty much done. Just to give a shout out, by the way, to Erin King. She's become the first ever Irish female player to win an individual award at the World Rugby Awards. She is the Women's 15s Breakthrough Player of the Year, 21 years old, from Naas. So she scored twice in that win against New Zealand in September. We have Peter Steph-Toy. He is the men's 15s Player of the Year for a second time. Obviously won it in 19. And then Ellie Kildune. If you watch any of the Women's Six Nations, you won't be surprised. She was phenomenal this year. 14 tries in 10 tests. She's the Women's 15s Player of the Year. Wallace Atiti got the nod in men's breakthrough.
And then if you're interested, the team of the year: Will Jordan, fullback; Cheslin Colby, Jesse Creel and Deolande centres. James Lowe got the nod as one of the 2 best wings in the world. Damien McKenzie got in at 10. Gibson Park 9, no surprises. Oxen Che, Malcolm Marks, Tyrrell Lomax, your front row. Eben Etzebeth and Tyke Byrne in the second row. And then Pablo Matera of Argentina, Steph Dutoy and Caelan Doris as your back row, Rory. Any scandals in there?
I think McKenzie it's not a scandal, but I think it reflects that maybe at the start, in the first year of a post-World Cup cycle, when everyone's rebuilding, that maybe we're not in the vintage era of outside halves, because he didn't even start some of New Zealand's games in November. There, he was very good against Ireland, but they're chopping and changing there, and they're really pining for Richie Mwanga. I see Scott Robertson's already kind of looking to try and change the rules so they can pick players in Japan based on Mwanga, basically. So
because I love McKenzie, but I'm not sure he's a starter even for his own country.
But it just I do think it just reflects, like, Pollard has been in and out with South Africa. Crowley's new. Marcus Smith has been very good in November, but George Ford was England's 10 in the Six Nations. Like, Finn Russell maybe was in with a shout, but Scotland didn't play for Scotland in July. They went and played a load of tier 2 teams and didn't play a test series like Ireland did. So I just don't. I think you can argue against McKenzie, but it's very hard to come up with a realistic alternative for him at the same time, which maybe reflects. Even Jalibert's been binned by France, and they're playing Ramos at 10 at the moment. Mac missed a lot of the year. It's just there's no outstanding 10.
Interesting. And
I'm not going to feed the beast by saying step forward Sam Prendergast, but the Ardy Sevilla is probably a bit harshly done by not to be in there. But Doris, certainly those Irish players all delivered in a good year for Ireland and not a great year. But if Ireland, there's just a mark of where Ireland are, that they can have a good year, not a great year, and still have 4 players in the team of the year.
Yeah. And
Caelan Doris be voted the best non-South African player in the world as well, having been nominated alongside 3 Boks.
No, it's true. Fellas, that is us. Thank you so much. Our rugby coverage, our Autumn Nation Series coverage was, again, with thanks to Energia, sponsoring rugby at all levels, Irish rugby at all levels. Rory, thank you.
Cheers, Joe. Cheers, Eddie.
Game on Saturday. Eddie O'Sullivan, much appreciated. Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Joe. Pleasure.